The golden couple, David and Colleen, whom everyone admired, met at a raucous college party. Their eyes locked across a room pulsing with music and laughter that night, and they fell hard and fast. Over the years, their bond became a fortress unshaken by life's battering storms, but even the mightiest fortresses can crumble their spark once a roaring blaze has dimmed to a flicker. I faced my cheating wife who wanted an open marriage, and my regal treatment was a divorce. David sat in the living room lost in memories, remembering their early days of laughter that echoed like music dreams that soared high. He watched Colleen dressed to kill get ready, recalling how work pressures and the numbing monotony of routine gnawed at the foundations of their marriage. Colleen was restless and seeking the thrill that once came so effortlessly, and she found herself captivated by the flirtations of a younger man. Colleen said, "Don't give me that look," slipping on her heels. In contrast to their increasingly casual and distant interactions at home, women in their 40s often seek out younger companionship. David, leaning back and swirling his drink, responded with a cold smile and frequently ends up divorced. Colleen's eyes flashed with a mixture of anger and arrogance. "You won't divorce me," she said with unnerving certainty. "You love me and I love you." David's laugh cut through the tension like a blade, saying, "Oh, how modern of you." His voice was dripping with sarcasm. "You're right, it's practically a trend. Even Joan Bennett, Mrs. Picture Perfect herself, has a lover. Isn't it just darling how everyone pretends their marriages are fine while screwing around behind closed doors?" Colleen's expression hardened, but she said nothing. The silence between them was heavy, filled with the unspoken words that hung in the air. David took a long sip of his drink, his eyes never. "Going on," Colleen said, "enjoy your night out, but keep in mind that every distraction has a cost." When the doorbell rang, Colleen glanced at David and asked, "Can you get that?" But she already knew the answer. David didn't even look up from his newspaper. "Nope," he said flatly, as if she had just asked him to walk across hot coals. "I'm not welcoming your boyfriend," she said, sighing, and opened the door to Ryan, her year-old date, who was patiently waiting on the porch. Colleen tried to calm the storm building inside David by saying, "Ryan's not my boyfriend," but he refused to listen. "Let's not forget we've been together 20 years, I've been loyal and supportive, and I deserve a little freedom." David glared at her, feeling the sting of disrespect. Instead, Ryan gave her a comforting smile that seemed to say, "No worries, I've seen worse." Colleen nodded shamelessly, "I'm glad you agreed to go out with me." She had met Ryan at Starbucks in her office building, and his flirtatious banter made her feel young. Since all of her friends were having affairs with younger men, why not her? Tonight was just another step in that direction. Ryan arrived in a sleek late-model Mercedes that screamed, "I've made it at the restaurant." He tipped the valet like it was pocket change and ushered Call inside with an air of effortless confidence. The evening went smoothly, with their earlier coffee conversations having laid the groundwork. After a delicious dinner, they went to a jazz club, swaying to the music. Ryan grew bolder, his hand resting on her thigh, and she didn't mind at all. "Colleen, you're a magnificently beautiful woman." She smiled, grateful for the compliment, but feeling the need to set boundaries. "Thank you, Ryan. I love my husband, and I'm not leaving him. I can't see you every day, maybe Sunday. Do you like the ballet? My cousin can get us good tickets. I've never been, but I'd love to go. David is an inter-artsy thing. I'll meet you instead of picking you up at home. It's a matina. Let's meet for lunch at AM. They resolved the specifics and she drove back to Colleen's house, kissed Ryan goodbye, and stole herself for whatever lay ahead. To her surprise, David was already asleep in bed in the bathroom. She wiped off her makeup, wondering if she should wake him because she feared a silent, cold morning. She called softly and he barely stirred, asking, "What do you want to talk?" "No, I want to sleep, okay, I'll get ready for bed." He started to get up, but she stopped him, saying, "Actually, I have a question." She stepped out in her nightgown, a conscious decision to demonstrate that she was still. Colleen sighed, "I thought maybe things had changed you seeing him again. We're going to the ballet on Sunday and having lunch." David scoffed, "So this isn't supposed to affect us, but you're seeing him Friday night and Sunday afternoon, our usual time together. Interesting." "Okay," he said, his voice laced with suspicion. "Did you have sex with him?" David asked bluntly. "No, David, it was just a date. I've never had sex on a first date." I know that David nodded, but his skepticism remained. When she realized he was no longer listening, he lay down with his back to her. She finished getting ready for bed in the hopes that David would accept their new situation. The following morning, Colleen wasn't shocked that David had left. She anticipated an adjustment period and hoped he would return soon because she had planned to spend Sunday with him. However, as the day went on, she realized he was avoiding her because he frequently worked on Saturdays, so she checked his office and wasn't shocked to see his car there after signing in at the Taking the elevator to the 7th floor, she went to David's office as she had done numerous times before. "Hello David," she said, greeting Colleen Oscar, who informed her that you were coming up and asked if she wanted to spend time with her husband. "Really boyfriend busy today," she replied, but David shot back, "Stop being childish, David. You've never been the only person in my life, I see my friends every day," Colleen said, adding that unless you're having sex with them, it's not the same. "I don't understand your objection," she said. "You can't even mention his name, and keeping him anonymous doesn't make it any less harmful." David pointed out that I can't remember the last time I was with him. "Actions won't affect our marriage or my feelings for you. I love you and want a long life together." "Then why are you doing this, Colleen? It's hurting me how you show love. You're being incredibly selfish," she said. David added, "I went on a date with a friend, but I did with him last night and I'll do it again tomorrow. He seems more important." "These are the only times I can get to know him," I said last night. "Even in college," Colleen explained, "until you get to the screwing stage, I've never just jumped into bed with someone." "Yes, I'll be discreet so you don't know when it happens and I'll keep it separate from our time together," David said sarcastically. "Anything else?" "As I told you last week, the quarterly reports are due, and I'm always here all day Saturday before compiling data. I expected us to spend Friday evening and Sunday together, but I guess I'm not a priority," David said bitterly. "Oh David, I'm sorry with everything going on I forgot." Colleen apologized. "Whatever, I have work to do." Colleen winced, but didn't protest in the hopes of preventing further conflict. Colleen insisted, "Okay, then how about we go to the coast tonight after I finish?" David suggested that they have dinner at Deo and spend the day tomorrow. He said, "Well, the ballet tickets are paid for, I'd feel bad canceling now." Colleen hesitated. "That's okay, Colleen, I didn't expect you to say yes, you can leave now." She left in the hopes that things would improve and that he would eventually be glad she was happy and accept her assurances. Her plan was to spend a few dates getting to know Ryan better before having sex, intending to meet him only when David wasn't available. She didn't want this to interfere with her marriage. But before quarterly reports, Colleen realized that David had not returned home until almost midnight as usual. She hoped that David would be feeling amorous tonight because he frequently enjoyed low-key closeness after long days, and occasionally they would end up making love. She loved him and wanted to make him happy, so she waited for him to undress under the comforter, her bare shoulders visible, and asked, "How is work, honey?" as he entered the bedroom. "As usual, I compiled all the data and sorted, so next week's reporting should go smoothly." David responded that he started undressing in the bedroom but went into the bathroom to strip down when he came out in shorts. Colleen said, "Darling, I thought we could reconnect tonight." She said, "Are you sure your boyfriend wouldn't mind?" David replied, "Comments like that aren't helpful. Can't we just enjoy ourselves tonight as husband and wife?" Colleen begged David that he was conflicted despite her actions, but that he still loved her and was aroused by her. He claimed she hadn't slept with Ryan yet, but he thought they had already made out. He wanted to win her back before she did it, knowing he wouldn't touch her if she did. He dropped his shorts, and Colleen grinned. They spent the next 2 hours getting back in touch, hoping to meet each other's needs. David hoped she would call off her plans for Ryan, and Colleen hoped to show that she could meet his needs while looking for fulfillment elsewhere. The following morning, David attempted to keep her in bed while declaring his love, but as time went on, he could sense her uneasiness. Colleen got up and said, "I'm sorry, David. I have to get ready." She chose Ryan over him again. David put on his shorts, feeling especially offended that she was undressed in front of her as she was getting ready to meet her lover. Colleen watched him go, saddened, but she didn't want to meet Ryan with the smell of David on her. She dressed modestly but attractively, and she called for David to say goodbye, but he didn't answer. When she realized that he had left their Mustang, she sighed and drove to meet Ryan, not realizing that Ryan's sedan was following her. Ryan assured her that it wouldn't be a problem, and she was a little late, but they were seated quickly, and she forgot about David and Ryan's presence. The lunch conversation flowed, and she enjoyed the food, briefly considering suggesting that David join her there for dinner. The ballet was stunning, and Ryan's expertise impressed her by explaining the meanings behind some of the movements, making her. After the ballet, they drove to a nearby hill country overlook with a breathtaking view of the city skyline. Colleen knew she wasn't the first woman Ryan had brought here, but she didn't mind. "You're such a beautiful woman, Colleen, I feel lucky you're here with me," he said, and she said, "I guess we're both lucky, Ryan." She was aware of the experiences she hadn't had with David, but it wasn't a criticism, rather it was an observation of their differences and how they complemented each other. Ryan was clearly disappointed when she reluctantly withdrew after they began making out intensely. "I'm sorry, Ryan, but I have boundaries," she explained, acknowledging Colleen. "I understand that you want to be comfortable before moving forward, but all of our coffee dates should count for something." "You're right, We did get to know each other well before our first official date. Maybe I'm being too rigid, she said. Ryan said, I'll bring what's needed, and I'll give you details tomorrow morning at Starbucks. Colleen agreed, and Ryan drove her back to the restaurant where her car was parked. She arrived home around PM feeling elated, quickly changing into loungewear, and starting dinner when she heard the garage door open. Hello honey, have a good drive, she asked as David entered, and he replied curtly. I need time to clean up before going home, so plan accordingly. He turned his cheek to kiss him, but he was still upset that she had left his bed for Ryan. At least he was talking to her, even if it was only briefly. She hoped that last night's lovemaking would help, but it seemed that leaving him this morning had erased the goodwill. Colleen told him that dinner would be ready in a few minutes, and she called David to dinner. He washed up and joined her, and she tried to strike up a conversation. Where did you drive today? She asked. Where specifically? I just drove on the highway. He asked if you stopped anywhere. I had lunch at a little deli off the freeway and stretched my legs a couple of times. That's all David said. Colleen tried to talk about her day at the ballet, and I don't care about your date. David interrupted, saying, this isn't about that. I just wanted David to get up leaving his meal half-eaten and going to his office. Colleen sat for a few minutes before clearing the table and packing the leftovers for David's lunch. She spent the evening tidying up the house in the hopes that David would leave his office. She wanted to save the evening and show him the beauty of the ballet, hoping that it would pique his interest in the future. Later, she got ready for bed and began reading, still hoping that David would join her close to midnight. She assumed he was waiting for her to go to sleep, so she went to his office and asked, Are you coming to bed? Eventually he replied, Please David, come to bed, lay beside me, make love, cuddle, or just lay. I have things to finish, Colleen, and if you think that's avoiding, I can't help it. The sooner I finish, the sooner I can go to bed, so excuse me, David said. Colleen grudgingly left and went back to bed, no longer interested in reading. She wondered if she was feeling guilty and interpreting his actions through that lens, but she dismissed the idea because she thought she was still in love with David and felt she was doing nothing wrong. She turned off the light, closed her eyes, and fell asleep quickly. The following morning, she woke up alone and discovered that David had left for work. She wasn't sure if he had ever gone to bed. She was getting frustrated with his attitude and had reassured him that nothing would change in their marriage, but he was still very hurt and decided not to beg him anymore. She continued to be a loving wife to David, so she dressed and went to Starbucks as usual to meet her friends. When she saw Ryan in the corner, she joined him. After getting her coffee, Colleen Ryan said, Same here, Ryan, I'm looking forward to tomorrow. She replied, Here's the info for tomorrow, and he handed her a note. Thank you for being discreet, Ryan. I don't want to hurt my husband, who has more privacy than he already has. Colleen said, Of course. We chatted a bit before Ryan left for work. Colleen then met with Joan, Marge, Ellen and Gail, but she hadn't shared her plans out of fear. Colleen felt hopeful that David was beginning to understand that her relationship with Ryan wouldn't affect their marriage, even though she didn't realize he was trying to dissuade her from pursuing a lover. The following day, Colleen arrived at Ryan's condo with anticipation. As soon as she stepped inside, Ryan pulled her close, and within minutes they were making love and Colleen had an intense. He asked with a hint of curiosity in his voice, My husband is off limits, he's a wonderful lover, if you turn this into a contest I'm leaving, and it will never happen again, clear, of course I meant no harm, just concerned about your satisfaction. Colleen said, Breathless better than your husband, and they relaxed in each other's arms. That was amazing. Ryan replied quickly, and she settled back into his arms. It was very good, I enjoy being with you, and look. After almost 3 hours, Colleen showered using her own soap and shampoo, leaving them at Ryan's condo for future visits. They said goodbye with a final passionate kiss, and she drove home while Ryan went back to work. Colleen enjoyed their time together and appreciated Ryan's responsiveness. Ryan also thought she was a perfect fit for a long-term, mutually beneficial relationship with no intention of marriage. When David came in at PM, Colleen greeted him warmly with a hug and kiss. At first he responded, but then his arms dropped, and she felt his body slump. She pulled away, worried. You had sex with him today, didn't you? David accused. What, David, do you say? That Colleen asked, trying to remain calm. You're a creature of habit, Colleen, and I know those habits. A midday shower. She kept checking herself in the mirror to make sure everything was in order. Was typical when we were younger and more active, but not in recent years until today. I haven't heard Colleen complain that your soap and shampoo smell strongly. The only explanation for this is that you recently showered and wanted to wash off while with him. I'm glad you didn't smell like the other man, but it gave you away. He shoved past her and entered the office, and damn it, Colleen muttered to herself. She thought her plan had worked, but she knew she needed to reconsider her strategy. After preparing broiled chicken breast with carrots and linguine, she went to the office to get dinner ready. When she called to say, "I'm not hungry," he curtly replied, "You need to eat." She insisted, "I'll get something later," but David said, suddenly, "I'm not hungry either." Colleen packed up the leftover food because she hated wasting food, even though they were wealthy. She spent the evening trying to figure out how to see Ryan without David knowing, but she never thought about not seeing Ryan at all. She went to bed by herself. She woke up in the morning and fell asleep easily since she was happy to be with Ryan. When she found David sleeping at his desk, she shook him awake and said, "David, you can't sleep like this. Come to bed or go to the spare room. This is bad for your back. I know you're angry, but I still love you and want to take care of you." David became confused and let her lead him to their bedroom. As she started to undress him, he remembered what had happened and resisted. "Stop, Colleen, David, I'm just trying to get you ready for bed. Just a few more buttons, please." "I'm sorry I raised my voice, Colleen, but you wouldn't stop. I just didn't want you touching me with hands that had been on another man's body." David said, "I've showered and washed my hands, but I understand it's more in your mind. I'm sorry, I'll leave you to it." Colleen shrank away, and David said, "Get your filthy hands off me." David rarely raised his voice in their 25 years of dating. Believing that David would eventually accept her affair, she never thought about ending her relationship with Ryan. Instead, she saw it as a test of her resolve, and after checking on David, who was asleep, she went back to bed and slept soundly. The following day, David texted her to let her know that he had worked late, and she realized she couldn't do more to support him. She knew what she needed to say the next time they spoke, which was Thursday morning, when Colleen was excited to meet Ryan. They had previously discussed meeting schedules at Starbucks. Colleen avoided Fridays and weekends to avoid interfering with her time with David, and Ryan's hectic schedule prevented her from attending morning Mondays. Instead, they decided to meet at Ryan's condo on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The meetings with her friends seemed to go on forever, and when they finally ended, she hurried out, making sure to follow the speed limit. She arrived at Ryan's unlocked condo, where he was waiting on the bed, and they skipped foreplay and had another intense 3-hour session. Ryan's flexible schedule allowed them this time, though she would never acknowledge it. Because Ryan had dated a lot of women, she thought he was a better lover than David. Colleen checked her phone and saw no messages, so she assumed David would be home at the usual time. She drove home and took a thorough shower, knowing that this would give away David, but she had a plan, so she changed into her loungewear and waited for him, who arrived just before p.m. "Good evening, honey. Will you be eating my cooking tonight?" she asked. "I'm fine, I grabbed something on the way home," to which David replied, "You know fast food is bad for you." "Well, I'll be in the office," he said dismissively. "I'd like to talk to you when you have a few minutes." "Okay," she said, "and I'd like to talk to you when you have a few minutes." He went to his office, closing the door behind him. Colleen worked on the fundraiser, but when she realized David wasn't going to strike up a conversation, she knocked. "Can we talk?" Isopose sat down. He said, "Yes, I wait, honey. Did you think I wouldn't find out his name?" David interrupted. "I thought you'd prefer not to know. I apologize for the inconvenience. I love you very much, honey. I don't think my new relationship will affect our marriage, but I understand you do. This is something I need and want. I hoped you'd be more understanding, but I'll be patient. I'll be here every evening and weekend hoping we can move past this. If you ignore me, I'll accept that, but I'll be here." He said, "I'm sorry, David, but no," she confirmed. "Well, I appreciate your honesty even if it's not what I wanted to hear." Is that all he asked? Clearly pained. "I love you, David, and I hope you can separate my love for you from my physical need that Ryan fulfills. This is your final decision, and nothing I can do will change your mind," she said softly, referring to the Tuesday shower incident. "I'll start showering every weekday afternoon to avoid tipping you off, but it will keep things consistent," she said. Colleen nodded and smiled at Riley before quietly leaving, closing the door softly. She had been nervous about the conversation, but she was proud of herself for handling it well, and she thought David would understand how important this was to her and how little it affected their life together. Colleen spent Friday night and the weekend at home, only leaving for quick errands. She invited David to join her in the hopes of allaying his fears, but he declined. They spoke as needed, without being hostile but also without showing affection, knowing he needed time to adjust. She attempted to make love on Saturday night, but David rebuffed her advances. She stayed optimistic, thinking that it would be soon. On Monday morning, David left early. Colleen thought that this would go on for a while, but she hoped that things would eventually return to normal. Midday showers were inconvenient, but they were a small price to pay to calm David's feelings. She met with her friends and listened to their stories about their young lovers while thinking about Ryan. Gail noticed that she was getting hot. After another cold Monday night with David, Colleen prepared for her Tuesday with Ryan. He met her at the door in a robe that quickly fell to the floor, and they had a passionate session. After a few minutes, they relaxed in each other's arms. I know your husband is off limits, Colleen, but how are things at home? Do you feel in danger? Ryan asked with genuine concern. All right, Colleen, you're getting a little red. Colleen replied, I'm fine, just a little warm. They spent another hour in tender love making before Colleen left, and she showered and took a long bath before reading her book while waiting for David, who arrived home at 7:36. You're worried, Ryan, but David isn't like that. He's having trouble adjusting and seems distant. He denies avoiding me, Colleen explained, so Ryan noted in brief phrases only as necessary. I've assured him I love him and made sure I'm there for him. It'll take time for him to realize you're no threat to our marriage, she said. PM Colleen said, hello honey, how was work? David said, I had a late lunch, I'm fine, and she offered him dinner tonight. Anything you'd like to talk about? She asked gently. No, I'll be in the office. He turned away. Okay, I'll be here if you need or want me. The door quietly closed, leaving Colleen alone once more. She wondered how much of his office time was actually work versus avoiding her, so she read her book, sure she was doing the right thing. Despite her loneliness, Colleen thought she could have both a loving husband and an attentive lover, which gave her the strength to get through the lonely moments. For the next few weeks, Colleen continued to meet Ryan every Tuesday and Thursday, enjoy amazing and intense sex evenings, and spend weekends with David. Colleen remained civil but distant, offering dinner every night, but David always declined. Colleen spent her evenings in the office, reading, working on charity, watching TV, and browsing the internet. After 3 months, Colleen noticed a change in David. Colleen thought this change indicated a change in David's attitude, but after another 3 months without physical intimacy, their relationship felt more like that of roommates or friends, and she missed their love-making that evening. His schedule stayed the same, and he was returning home in a better mood, albeit a little later. They began having dinner together a few nights a week, and occasionally watched TV or read together, even though they hadn't resumed making love. She started by saying, I know it hasn't been easy, to which David replied, I know and I'm sorry, but I'm concerned about our lack of a sex life. We haven't made love since I started seeing Ryan, and I miss it. I haven't told you this, but I have no intention of having sex with you, she said. David, that's ridiculous, she said bluntly. There's no reason for us not to have sex, Colleen objected. David responded, I can make choices too. He got up and went to bed, leaving Colleen stunned. She hadn't anticipated him ending their sexual relationship. She had assumed that having a lover would encourage him. However, she had to reconsider her strategy, so Colleen chose to increase the pressure subtly. She had kept her distance in the hopes that David would change his mind, but now she would intensify the teasing, become more physical, wear skimpy clothes to bed, or sleep naked. She was determined to make it difficult for him to resist, but her plan didn't work. 8 months had passed since their last sexual encounter, and although Ryan had taken care of her physical needs, she missed the emotional connection with David and became frustrated. After another month, she made the decision to take advantage of whatever David had to offer. If he wanted a sexless relationship, then she would express her love in other ways and accept what he gave. This decision put them on a new path. On a warm Wednesday morning, Colleen parked her Lexus outside David's building, picked up her purse, and signed in. Terry, David's longtime receptionist, saw her as soon as she got off the elevator. Mrs. Lynch. It's good to see you again. It's been a while since you visited Terry. She said, hello Terry. Is David in his office? Colleen asked, I'm already walking that way, ma'am, but please wait. They're working with confidential documents this morning, so I need to announce you. Terry picked up. She entered the guard's desk and headed to the 7th floor. She had not been there during the day and had forgotten how busy the office was. Called David's extension and said, Mr. Lynch, your wife is here to see you. Terry said that Colleen couldn't hear the answer, but that the conversation would end soon. Colleen nodded and looked around the office, noting a mix of familiar and unfamiliar faces. She assumed that Eileen's desk was empty, so she assumed that she was in David's office. After a few minutes, David's door opened, and a stunning woman with long dark brown hair and a prominent chest emerged. Be in her late or early, Colleen didn't like her right away. Mrs. Lynch, nice to meet you.
I'm Alana.
Come on back, Alana said, leading Colleen down the familiar hallway. Alana stayed at the door as Colleen entered David's office, said, Thank you, Alana.
Take lunch.
Now, we'll continue at David's office. Yes, sir, Alana replied, and walked out, leaving the door closed behind her. Colleen couldn't help but remarked, I assume you didn't come here to insult my assistant. When asked what position Colleen continued to hold, David responded, I created a position with less responsibility and no travel because the job was getting too big for her and she needed to slow down. Colleen asked, Yes, your jealousy is amusing and ironic considering the circumstances. Why are you here? And David looked surprised when he asked to take my husband to lunch on a Wednesday. Colleen said firmly, yes, because I miss you, David. I wanted to spend time with you and show that I love you. They opened a new Vietnamese restaurant nearby, she explained, so let's go. David agreed, and they walked mostly in silence with a few remarks about what they saw. Colleen held his arm, and he didn't seem to mind. They were seated quickly, and the hostess called him by name, implying that he was a regular. They didn't discuss anything specific, and David recommended some dishes for her to try. Colleen took his hand across the table, and he didn't pull away. Did you think I love you, David? Colleen asked softly. Love me? My kind of love doesn't allow for what? You did, but at least you chose a good man, David replied in a sarcastic tone.
What do you mean? I had him checked out.
I know you visit Ryan's condo every Tuesday and Thursday, but I saw you came today to avoid missing out on your time with him. At least he's not a scammer or a gold digger, David said coolly. Colleen defended his famous last words, but you're right, he seems to be in it only for the sex.
Let's change the topic, David.
David pointed out your choice, and Colleen interjected, yes, my choice. You chose to cheat on me, so no sex and our time together is just watching TV or being in the same room. That's why I'm here today. That's why I'm not happy with this and I want to change it. I have no intention of giving up Ryan, but I want our time to be meaningful. Colleen begged, what us? We're more like roommates than husband and wife, and we haven't shared sex in almost a year. Colleen argued, don't get Colleen as long as you're seeing Ryan. This is the most it can be. David responded, I don't accept that, David. Our marriage can be the same. My time with Ryan doesn't affect my time with you. I don't love him. I don't mind your time with friends because no one should revolve around one person, but I won't pretend nothing's happening while you're with another man. Our marriage was once 2 people, but now it is 3, and never will be the same. When he finished, he took out his wallet, put a bill on the table, and stormed out. Colleen quickly gathered her belongings, whispered apologies to everyone around her, and hurried out of the restaurant, oblivious to their disapproving looks. You don't love him and just use him for sex makes it worse, she asked, her voice rising with frustration. By the end of his tirade, David's voice had steadily gotten louder, and Colleen's attempts to calm him had been unsuccessful. She thought about talking to her friends about it, but decided against it for the time being because she didn't want them to think she had failed at something they handled so well. She knew she couldn't catch up, so she took her time and walked to her car. She tried to stop crying until she got inside, but she couldn't understand why her relationship with Ryan was affecting her marriage. Joan and the other ladies had lovers and were still happily married, so why was it so difficult for her? Not wanting David to think she had gone to Ryan for comfort, she went home and took her usual afternoon shower. She hoped to resume the conversation calmly once David had calmed down, so she took some time to get ready. The truth was that this problem needed to be resolved, and they couldn't carry on as they had before David returned home.
Late, perhaps 9 p.m.
He was considerate enough to inform Colleen that he would be late, so she prepared dinner and did some light housework to keep herself occupied while she waited for him.
Can we talk?
Colleen asked as soon as he entered the room. I don't know what else I can say, Colleen. You've had an affair despite my objections, and it's been going on for almost a year. You think the problem is my objection, not the affair itself. We won't agree, so what's the point of talking again? David said emphatically. Colleen argued that we are what we are because of your affair. David, Joan, Ellen, Gail, and Marge all have happy marriages with lovers on the side. Why can't we do the same? David chuckled silently and motioned for Colleen to sit down. I spoke to their husbands when this began, with the exception of Wendell, whose affairs are well known and everyone knows he cheated on January 1st, but I talked to the others about what Colleen was saying. David explained, Oh David, that's sweet. Did they give any advice? Colleen asked. I hope they did, and I've applied many of them.
At first, I was confused.
I thought you'd get this out of your system, so I let you go on dates and even meet Ryan for your afternoon tryst a few times. However, after the second time, you made it clear that you plan to keep seeing him, so I asked the happy husbands for advice to see how they handled it. If they accepted it, perhaps they could offer pointers. Observed any changes David had made to improve their marriage, such as when she asked, Did you know that only Rick and Gail continued having sex once Gail took a lover? Colleen's shocked response was, I don't believe it. Joan always says they're happy, and she shook her head. I'm saving face. Colleen. Joan started her affair in response to Wendell's infidelity, and when Wendell found out, he stopped being with her completely. It didn't affect him much. When Marge heard about Joan's affair, she did the same. Their marriage didn't improve, but they're still married and Marge is happier, David added, but Marge always praises their marriage, which Colleen said was still in disbelief, likely because she wants everyone to believe everything. They have separate bedrooms and communicate via texts and emails, David explained, so it can't be true. Colleen. David pointed out that his excellent image is important for older wealthy women, but they're my friends, so they be honest with me. Colleen insisted that David smiled at this. Rick then said that he tried to ignore it and carry on as usual, but after a few months it became obvious that Gail was bored with him. After her exciting affair with a younger man, ordinary married sex wasn't exciting, and they haven't been together since. David explained, I can't believe this, I can't believe my friends would lie about their marriages, the husbands must be trying to make the wives look bad, and I doubt the husbands are going without sex except Wendell. Colleen said that she was having a hard time accepting the fact that they are not going without sex because they have a simple solution to meet those needs. David said, oh, and what is that? Colleen asked. Her curiosity piqued, and he said that they hired personal assistants. After a moment, Colleen needed to understand what that meant, but when she did, the new girl David hired, Alana, appeared unfazed by Colleen's reaction and had been expecting it. I hired Alana shortly. Following your talk, I was honest about Eileen's need for assistance and setting up a new role. In fact, I hired Alana because of her business background. She has a business degree and was highly recommended for her abilities. For the first few months, everything between us was very professional, David said, disregarding his wife's jab that her job required us to spend a lot of time together, and we became close. After a few months, I opened up to her about what you were doing, and it was such a relief to relieve some of my burdens. That must have been when I noticed your mood improving, and to think that I thought you were coming around, Colleen said with a hint of bitterness in her voice. After that, we talked about almost everything about ourselves and became very close. David went on to ask, when did you start sleeping with her? Colleen asked bluntly, just a couple of months ago. Unlike you, I'm not the type to jump into bed with someone I met in a coffee shop. David's tone was sharp, and Colleen winced at the insult. Since she lives alone and doesn't have anywhere to go, we built an easygoing relationship that included a lot of flirting and some innuendo. I was sure she was attracted to me based on her actions, such as light touches and standing close, and I was attracted to her. One night, we stayed late to finish a project because I didn't feel like going home, and we drank and chatted while sitting next to each other on the leather couch in my office. David recalled, Jesus, David, we did it on that couch. Colleen interrupted her voice, and David simply grinned and said, okay, I think I've heard enough. Colleen tried to keep her cool, but that was the beginning. I reasoned that if you could do it, so could I, but I always do it when you're busy, so you purposely stayed late to do it, David added. I said, Colleen, we're basically roommates now, and you made a choice and I made mine, David said. As a matter of fact, my time with Ryan didn't interfere with my time with you. You left the marriage first, and I just replied, the truth is that you were considerate since you were the first one despite my objection. I appreciate that, but to be honest, I didn't think I owed you much consideration. David's tone was cold, and Colleen was in pain as she realized how her relationship with Ryan affected David despite the boundaries. She had thought it would be out of sight, out of mind, but it wasn't. After a few minutes, David spoke again. There's something else I need to tell you, Colleen said quietly, and when he revealed that Alan is about 2 months pregnant, Colleen's eyes widened and she gasped, as if things weren't bad enough. It just got worse. It's yours, she stammered. Of course, how did this happen? Colleen asked, her voice shaking. David took a deep breath, and it was deliberate. Much more she could handle, but she had to know that now was the time to come clean, regardless of how much it hurt you. You intentionally got her pregnant, which is why she asked. I have a valuable business that we own alone, Colleen, and I have no one to leave it to right now. I had intended to sell the business eventually, but I don't like the idea of leaving my employees' futures in the hands of a stranger or, worse, a conglomerate. Or our baby. David clarified, are you divorcing me, David? Colleen asked, fear creeping into her voice. I'm not planning on it, at least not yet. I plan to keep things as they are. Alana wants to marry me and even paid a lot of money for a prenuptial agreement in my favor, but she's also fine with things remaining the same as long as we spend time together, so the status quo is you can continue seeing Ryan, and I'll have Alana. David said, this was too much. Maybe she was naive, but Colleen never expected things to turn out this way. Colleen got up and picked up her keys and purse. Colleen's voice remained steady as she said, I need some time to process all of this. I'm going to take a drive and might be very late. I'll keep in touch by text so you won't worry. Despite the turmoil inside her, Colleen left the house and drove aimlessly through the city, wondering how things had gotten to this point. She thought Alana was Hispanic, but she wasn't sure. She sent David occasional texts to let him know she was still driving, and he always responded. The fact that he still cared about her well-being provided her some peace of mind, and she eventually made it home at about a.m. David was asleep when she arrived at the house, but he had thoughtfully left her bedside lamp on. She went to her closet to change, and when she came out, he was sitting up.
Are you okay, Colleen?
David asked, his concern in his voice. Yes, David, I'm fine, but I'm tired. Let's get some sleep and talk tomorrow, she said, climbing into bed and sleeping. They never got around to talking the following day, mostly because there wasn't much else to say. David left for work, and Colleen met up with her friends. She considered calling off her afternoon with Ryan, but ultimately was glad she did. He realized right away that something wasn't right, and when they did have sex, it was slow and gentle. The weeks that followed went by swiftly, with Colleen now aware of David's relationship with Alana. David stayed late at work more frequently, even though she knew it still hurt. Colleen Connors Lynch stepped off the elevator on the 7th floor of her husband's office building and headed straight for his office. Terry, the receptionist, tried to stop her, knowing that her boss and Alana were in there alone and possibly in a compromising position. She interpreted this as a sign that the state of her marriage was seriously affecting her because she had never experienced a sensitive stomach before and spent several evenings in bed. Mrs. Lynch, wait, Terry called out to Colleen, who turned to Terry, whom she had always liked, and smiled gently.
It's okay, Terry.
I already know about them, but thank you for your kindness and concern. Colleen continued down the hallway to her husband's office, entering without knocking and discovering Alana on his lap. The sound of the door caught their attention, and both of their heads turned simultaneously. What on earth are you doing here, Colleen? She asked. When Alana came out of the bathroom, David demanded with a tone of shock and annoyance, we need to talk. It couldn't have waited until tonight, David said, but I wanted to do it here since it concerns Alana as well. Should we sit on the couch? Colleen suggested, and they all sat with Colleen on one end and David on the other, with Alana perched on the armrest behind David. Colleen handed David a file folder, asking, what's this? I'm divorcing you, Colleen said calmly. Yes, David, I think you'll find the terms agreeable. I haven't asked for any part of the company, though I added a little extra in the cash settlement to make up for it, but it's nothing you can't afford, Colleen explained. David looked over the terms outlined in the filing and found nothing objectionable. In fact, it was probably less than the court would have ordered. The look on his face was priceless. If it weren't for the seriousness of the situation and the pain she felt, she would have thought it was funny that she was divorcing him. Granted her the settlement, the only question David had was why, or more specifically, why now? There were a few reasons, but primarily because I love you, Colleen said softly. David's tone was perplexed. I've loved you since I first met you at Sheila Mullen's pool party when we were 17, and we've been together for more than half our lives, almost years, and I want you to be happy. I made a bad choice and damaged us beyond repair, so I'm letting you be happy with Alana and your new baby Colleen. Explained that Colleen's face lit up when she told Alana that she would be getting married to the man she loved. David was more shocked than anything else.
What about you, Colleen?
David asked, still trying to process everything. Oh, your generosity will more than take care of me for the rest of my life. I'm embarking on a new period of my life and I'm a little scared, but it's exciting. Colleen replied, lot of women live alone, Colleen, I'm sure you'll be fine, dismissively. Actually, that's not what I meant, I won't be alone for long. Colleen said, it looks like I got myself pregnant. David's mouth dropped, and Alana's eyes widened in surprise. The room fell silent as they processed the news, and the folder of papers thumped to the floor as David looked at his soon-to-be ex-wife in shock. They had never had children together, preferring their freedom, but now that their marriage was ending, they were each starting a new journey called parenthood. However, even as he said it, David understood what he meant because he hadn't had sex with. Unless Colleen had another lover, it had to be Ryan's wife in months. He didn't want to hurt or insult her, so he was relieved when she accepted the question. What kind of woman do you think I am? Colleen asked in a light-hearted manner, laughing a little. Oh, I guess we know the answer to that, don't we? Yes, it's Ryan's. Ryan is and always will be a bachelor. We would never work out, and I don't love him anyway. To his credit, he hasn't denied it and has been very. David said, your generosity will allow me the freedom to raise my baby, plus I plan to have a full-time live-in nanny which you will be indirectly paying for, which is why I wanted to keep the house. Colleen replied, I did notice, which rather surprised me, but I wasn't going to argue. You know how much I love you. I'm agreeable about child support, of course, but the principal has even stated that he plans to try to be a good father, even though he has doubts about his ability. The nanny, Colleen added, I think you're right. I must say, Colleen, I never expected this, but it makes sense. Oh yes, we had a serious talk about their nonsense and lies. They felt bad for leading me down that path, but I assured them it was my choice. They finally admitted the truth, but I'm still the only one going for a divorce, so I guess that's a point in my favor, you know, if you ever need anything. Colleen replied, you can call me if you want, but it's time I stand on my own 2 feet. I went from Dad's house to college to your house. I promise I'll call if I need to, but I plan to do it myself. David reassured her, and Colleen followed suit. Colleen hugged David and Alana before turning and leaving the way she had come.